All right, so I'm going to show you guys how to start your drawing for the still life project, the apple still life project. And so what you need is, and everybody should see, you guys should all have a ruler near you, so grab a ruler. We're only going to use this once. So after we use it, we're not going to use it again. You need a 4H pencil. I know it's kind of hard to see this, but 4H pencil. And your pink eraser. That's it. Everything else should be put away. You don't need anything else for this part of the project, okay? Now, while you guys are using the 4H pencil, I'm going to be using just a regular pencil because I want my pencil lines to show up darker so it just shows up on the video. You guys, again, when you're drawing, you should always be using your 4H pencil and drawing very lightly so that way it's easy for you to erase those lines away for good. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do, if you guys look, you need to have your paper so that it's horizontal. That means it needs to be wide, okay? So make sure your paper's horizontal. This would be vertical. This is not the way you want it. You want it horizontal. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to basically figure out where the middle of our paper is. So I want you guys to take your ruler. I'm going to start over here on the right side. And if you guys look, your paper is 8 inches tall. If it's not, you have your paper turned the wrong way. And then 8 divided by 2 is what? 4. So I'm going to make a mark right here at 4. And again, I'm making my marks dark so they show up on the screen. You guys should be making your marks light. And I'm going to do the same thing over here on the other side. Marking right here at the 4-inch mark. Again, I'm making my lines dark. You should be doing yours light. So this is going to be basically the area where the back edge of our construction paper line is going to be. Okay? It's not going to be completely on this, but it's going to be in the area. So that's why I wanted you guys to find the middle. I'll give you guys a chance to divide that up, and then I'm going to show you how to draw your construction paper's edge. Okay, so what we're going to do, you need to look at your apple. Okay? So you need to look at your apple, and you need to figure out, is your apple on the right or the left? And what I mean by that is your apple's going to be on one side and your cast shadow is going to be on the other side. So when I look at my apple's on the right and the cast shadow is to the left of it. Again, people are going to have different answers than the one that I have because I'm looking at my apple. You guys are looking at yours. Okay? So look at your apple. Figure. All right, and basically, so after you figure that out, and I'll show you guys, this is my drawing for first period, okay? So if you guys look, this is the edge of my construction paper line. If you notice, it's low on this side and it's higher on this side. This is where my midpoints are, okay? The side that it's high, that's where my apple's going to go. The low side is where my cast shadow is going to go. I want to make sure that I have enough room for my apple and my cast shadow both in this drawing. So by putting my apple over on the side, that gives me plenty of room for the cast shadow. If I put my apple here in the middle, I've got barely enough room for my cast shadow. Okay? And as you can even see on this drawing, my cast shadow actually goes past the edge, and that's fine. So what you're going to do, if your apple's on the right, your high side is going to be on the right. If your apple's on the left, your high side is going to be on the left. So because my apple, I'm going to have a hard time here. Because my apple is this way, so I'm going to show you guys, you are going to, I'm running into my computer here. There we go. But I have to kind of turn my paper here. I'm going to put my low side so that it hits the middle line or middle mark that I just put. And then I'm going to kind of just put this high side about, and I'm just going to guess, about 1 inch higher than the midpoint line here on this side. And then again, I'm going to draw my line really dark. You guys should be doing it very lightly. And so there you go. So again, high on the, for me, on the right, because that's where my apple's going to go. Lower on the side that the cashew is going to be on. Okay. Again, here's my finished one from first period. Okay. Again, if your apple's on the left, you're going to have the opposite of me. So I'm going to come around and take a look at what you've got before we move on. Okay, so the next step of this is going to be to start drawing the apple. So again, I'm going to show you this finished one from my last class that I did. As you guys can see, your apple is going to go past the back edge of your construction paper. So you're going to have part of the apple going above it and the rest of the apple going below that line. Okay? So first thing we need to do is we need to figure out in general where it's going to go, and basically right now just how tall it's going to be. Okay? So what I want you guys to do, I want you to take your hand, your other hand. So I'm right-handed. I'm going to take my left hand. And I want you to just kind of put your hand like this. Not like a tight fist, but sort of like an open fist, if there's such a name. And I want you to put it right on top where you think you want your apple to go. You don't want it all the way over here so that it goes off the paper. But you want it just over here to one side. Okay? And then basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to just take my pencil, I'm going to make a mark above my fingers there, and right here at my at the bottom of my palm. And so I got those two marks, and I'm just going to kind of extend these like this. Kind of feel like that's a little... Now when I look at that, what I've got, I feel like that's a little too tall, so I am going to drag this down a little bit. I'm going to shorten this. I'm going to adjust this a little bit. Yeah. So I'm just fixing this a little bit because that just looked a little too big to me. So there you go. And it gives you an idea of the size. Now, contrary to belief, some people might think that if they make their apple really small, that's going to make their job a lot easier on them. But it's not. Going smaller can actually make the project a lot more difficult. I think in this situation, especially for your first time shading an actual still life object, it would bode well for you to make your apple on the larger side. All right, so this is what I've got, okay? So the next thing I want to do is I want to figure out just how wide this needs to be, okay? I definitely don't want my apple to go past this edge, so it's not going to go past there. So what I need to do is I'm going to use the drawing method, basically comparative measurement, and I'm going to compare the height of the apple to the width. So I'm going to pick up my apple. You don't pick yours up, but I just want to put this on the video. So if I look at this apple, okay, I'm going to try to turn it like the way I see it. What I want to do is I would just take my hands just in front of the apple without touching it, and I would compare its height to its width. I need to do it this way. So I would compare its height to its width. And when I do that, I can tell that it is wider than it is tall. Okay, so I need to make sure that it's wider than its measurement for its height. We are all using the same fake apples. So you guys are using the same dimensions basically I am. Okay? So when I draw this, I'll put my apple back. I've got my height here. I'm going to take my fingers and basically go like this, turn it around, and then I'm going to make it a little bit wider. So again, I'm going to take the height, and I'm going to turn it and just make my width dimension a little bit wider. Try to do this so my arm doesn't get in or block the video. There we go. So height measurement is going to be smaller than the width measurement. And so what I've created here is basically kind of, and if you want to, you can draw this out, again, very lightly. I've created like a box for me to draw my apple in. This should not look like a square. If it's a square, you have the wrong dimensions. It should look like a rectangle, wider than it is tall. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to use the next drawing technique, which is finding the midpoint. And I am going to divide this space in half, and I'm not using my ruler, just using my pencil, and I'm going to divide it in half. I don't need to be perfect on this, I just need close. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to give you a minute to kind of play around with it. I'm going to come around and walk around and see how you guys are. Okay, so moving on. Now we're ready to start drawing the apple. So when we start drawing this, I need to adjust my apple. I'm going to go the other way. So when you look at this, I think probably the most common problem a lot of people have when they draw an apple is that they think it's a perfect circle, and it's far from it. To make this look realistic, you got to embrace all the imperfections that there are in it. So what I'm going to do, and I like to start sort of down here at the bottom. So I'm going to look at the bottom edge, and when I look at the bottom edge, it is not perfectly round. There's sort of bumps and angles and even straight edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and start drawing this. So I like to start with the part that's actually sitting right on top of the ground. And then I just start to move out. And again, one of the things that I notice a lot of times is just how much angle and straight edges are actually on an apple. Now some people may want to start on the sides and start drawing their apple on the sides. That's fine too. But you're just going to kind of work around in a circle. And one of the things that I've noticed, we got this wrong side, is that I actually have at the very top sort of like a high side and a low side. So I'm going to pay attention to that. And again, pay attention to those areas, those bumps and fake bruises, since we're dealing with fake apples. Now I'm again drawing fairly dark here, just so you guys can see it on the screen. You should be drawing very lightly so it's easy for you to kind of edit and fix your work. So here's my initial shape that I have. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend some time just kind of playing around with it. And fixing it up. Now apples are one of those forms that artists use all the time. They're easy to get. Obviously a lot of people have just apples sitting in their house. They're not exactly perfect forms, which gives it a really nice challenge. And then you have on top of that, if you're wanting to try to practice color and value, there's a lot of really cool variations in them. So if something you guys are, obviously all you guys are working on your project, so you're not probably spending a lot of time watching me, which is fine. But one of the things I just want to point out is that I've been fixing and adjusting this a lot. So as I kind of go through and edit, I'm finding things that I might have missed. Some turns, some flat areas. I'm just going in and trying to add those back in. Okay. And you can see, too, I didn't go quite all the way to the edges of that box that I made, and that's fine. Perfectly fine. I'm not far off. I'm just a little off. But it's not enough to change the proportions of the apple. It's still wider than it is tall, so I still got it. Okay, so I'm going to give you about a minute or two just to keep working on it, and I'm going to show you how to do the part right here where the stem goes. All right, so the next step I'm going to show you guys is how to basically do the dip that you see up here at the top in the spot where the stem comes out of. So when you're doing this part, again, a lot of people assume that it's in the middle of the apple. But when I sit there, and again, this is going to be hard to show, but I'll try to make my point here. Good. Okay, so when I look at my apple, when I divide it in half to find the middle, okay, and I look at that and how that relates to the stem, my stem is off to the side, okay? And even at that, this little dip that I see right here that the stem comes out of is not centered either, okay? So these are observations that I want to hold on to, because if I put everything perfectly in the middle, it's just going to look like a baseball with something stuck in it, okay? So when I do this, and I'll show you, I'm going to look at just sort of, this dip isn't going to happen right here at the top. It's going to be kind of towards the top, about right here. And it's going to kind of look like a smile. And again, mine's over more to the right than it is to the left, so I'm going to pay attention to that detail. So it's just going to look kind of like a smile, off to the side, like that. And then again, when I look at now the stem, when I look at the stem, my stem gets kind of skinny at the bottom and gets wider at the end. And again, it's not centered. In fact, it's even off to the side in this dip. And it also, too, everybody's going to be a little bit different. But when I look at this, I need to make that a little bit deeper. My stem doesn't exactly go past the back edge of the apple. So my stem kind of sits right here like this. It doesn't go past this edge. It's kind of thin here at the bottom, gets thicker, and then it's really wide at the very end of it, which is the part where it was connected to the tree. So that's how I see my stem and the dip. Now again, this helps me see maybe some areas that I need to fix and adjust. So I'm just going to go in, and like I said, I am exaggerating a lot of these bumps and stuff that I see on the apple, just because I do think these fake apples are a little too round and ball-like. So I'm playing up a lot of this stuff. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys like a little bit of time here to kind of play around with the stem and the little dip, or I like to call it the smile, on your apple, and then continue to just kind of fix and edit your apple shape. See, I'm even still fixing it. I can't stop fixing it. All right, so I'm going to give you a little bit to do that. I'll walk around. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show you guys how to do, and you notice I haven't gotten rid of my guidelines yet. I can do that later. So now I'm going to deal with the cast shadow. So I like to, when I'm drawing something, I want to figure out where it starts and where it ends. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look to see where the cast shadow sort of starts at the bottom of the apple. So when I look at this, it sort of starts about right here for mine. So I'm going to make a mark on the apple where I see, again, it's starting right underneath it. And of course, my light has changed since this morning. And the position of this cast shadow is so very important because this is what's going to make your apple look like it's actually sitting on the table. If you don't draw it, if you draw it wrong or you just don't spend enough time drawing it, it could look like the apple's floating in the air. So you want to make sure that you figure where this stuff needs to end and start. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out where do I see that cast shadow ending, essentially on the back side. So with that, this is the part that I find a lot of people misjudge. They think it's going to be somewhere up here, but when I look at mine, my line is below the middle of the apple. So try to find the middle of your apple and then ask yourself, where does that shadow hide behind that apple? Mine is right here. So make a mark right there. Again, your answers are going to be different from mine because you're sitting somewhere different and you got different lighting. And so the next thing for me then is to figure out just how wide. So how far is this going to stretch out? My shadow actually stretches out a lot. In fact, I'm not going to see the end of it. It's going to be off the paper. But for some of you, you will see it. So if you think back to that picture in your packet, the comparative measurement, if you're trying to figure out how wide do you need to make your cast shadow, compare it to the width of your apple. So compare the two, and you're going to have to look at your apple sitting at the table. You're going to have to ask yourself, okay, so this is how wide my apple is. Does the shadow come out the same distance as the apple? Okay? And that'll give you an idea of just how far out it needs to go. Once you figure that out, then you can start drawing this. Now my shadow here right underneath the apple is just really, I don't see a whole lot. It's just right under it. Kind of comes out this way. And I'm going to turn my drawing upside down here so I can just draw this edge better. And I'm just going to draw it light at first, and then I'll play with it. I need to see what it looks like first before I do this. I'm going to lift that up a little bit. And I just kind of play with it. Mine is really, really stretched out. Again, everybody's shadows are going to be different. Some of you are going to have really small cast shadows. Some are going to have longer ones. Now, some of you might even see more than one. You are going to be drawing the cast shadow that I outlined for you on the paper. That may even help you with the drawing of it. See the shape? If you have more than one cash shadow, you are more than welcome to draw them all if you want to. I think that's a fantastic way to challenge yourself more, and I'll be honest with you guys, those are pretty fun to do. So basically now you have everything you need here, and you just got to play around with it. This is also a good time too. You can erase your guidelines. So now that you have the apple and the cash shadow pretty much on there, you can get rid of this stuff. And the rest of, and you can also, too, get rid of that construction paper edge that is through the apple. It's definitely something we don't want to keep. So erase all those old guidelines. And then continue to kind of mess around with your drawing, making adjustments and fixes. Until you feel like it's in a good place, okay? So I'm going to give you the rest of the time here to kind of play around with this stuff. The next step, believe it or not, for us is going to be to start shading.